That beautiful tune is called The Pretty Girl Milking Her Cow, and it was a song, an Irish love song, and used to be extremely well known in Ireland. Is one of those things where it was so well known that after a while professional musicians stopped playing it because people got tired of it, which seems amazing. And I learned it back around 1977, 78 from an Irish fiddle player named Larry Matthews. And he taught it to me, and I fell in love with it immediately. This is when I was living in London in those days, and he and his brother Terry, the Matthews brothers, they were a great little duo. And they came over to visit, and Larry taught me that tune. Here's one you'd like. And I certainly did. And it's interesting to remember this, but after he taught me the tune, he told me in a sort of joking way. And it was one of those things where it was a joke, but there's a point to the joke. And he said, he says, according to the tradition, he says, that tune was not composed by mere mortals. It was leprechauns that wrote that. And so we laughed. But sometime later, I realized that this was something he wanted to convey to me, that according to the tradition, the people who produced this song, this was the belief. And not long after that, I was reading a book by Yeats called Irish Fairy Tales, which was not a collection of fairy tales in the sense of stories we tell children, but a collection of like folk tales involving fairies and leprechauns and pukas and whatnot. And in the introduction to that book, he mentions this tune. He says specifically, he's talking about the fact that in the countryside of Ireland, when he wrote this, say the 1890s or so, the old beliefs, the pagan beliefs that included believing in all these fairies and good people and banshees and whatever, the she, these things were still so deeply ingrained. He said no country person in Ireland would ever consider lilting or singing The Pretty Girl Milking a Cow if he was walking by the place where they thought the fairies lived, the fairy raths, which in fact would have been the standing stones, the ancient stones from pre-Celtic times. Take Me Out to That Ball Game was my piece de resistance when I was a kid growing up in Richmond, Virginia. And there's a little bit of significance in many directions for this today because we're doing this filming at the big center for acoustic guitar here in Richmond, California. What I'll say about these two Richmonds, I've lived in both of them, and neither is as nice as Richmond and Surrey, and they're both nicer than Richmond, Indiana, and we'll leave it at that. I'm very excited by this business with LPs. I've got a couple of things that have come out on LP recently, and the last one is the first real Duck Baker LP to be released in about 35 years. And it's also a project that's near to my heart because it's me playing all solo versions of Thelonius Monk tunes. My old friend John Zorn got me to do a CD of Herbie Nichols' music, who, like Monk, was a great jazz pianist composer who played very modern, involved harmonic stuff. And I did this record, like I say, 20 years ago, and it actually got me a little bit of a name in the jazz guitar world, where I'd always been known as a folk guitarist before that. And so right away I wanted to do a Thelonius Monk follow-up. John said, "Nah, everybody's done Monk." And so over the years I tried to get various people interested, and some were, but then it got harder and harder, and a couple of companies went out of business. But here, just a few years ago, then I did get the recording done, and a very fancy LP-only company called Triple Point Records, which specializes in very modern jazz, put this out. One thing about these modern LPs, they're not like the Kicking Mule LPs, or even the worse, the ones that came out in the 80s, because in those days, vinyl was the normal way to listen to music, especially before there were cassettes and stuff. And so, of course, the record companies made them as cheaply as they could. The vinyl wasn't that good. You know, you look at the ones as the 70s went on, and they got thinner and they kind of wobbled, and the pressings weren't good. But these nowadays LPs are almost like a luxury item, and they really are beautiful items. Audiophile, they weigh about 5 pounds. And so I'm delighted with this whole thing, both the Les Blues Du Richmond and Duck Baker Plays Monk, because I feel like LPs, that is a real record. I mean, I'm fine with CDs, but an LP it's got something extra. So I'm going to try to play a track now from the Duck Baker Plays Monk. This is a blues. Thelonius Monk was from North Carolina, and in his own way, he played the Piedmont blues. This one's called Misterioso.